Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. In the spirit of the trees, in the spirit of all of living nature of which we are a part, I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. As we begin today, I want to report in that Claire and I were able to go visit Rick Buckley yesterday. Rick has been for 400 and some sessions the technical support person for Humanity Rising, and it was a week ago today that he missed our session, and it turned out that he had a fairly significant stroke. So when I missed him, he didn't answer the calls. I called his wife, and she was up in Washington State. Rick was in the Bay Area, and she called her son, and they found Rick, and he was rushed to the hospital. And just about a week later, we were able to visit him in a place called Vallejo, which is the premier stroke, severe injury clinic in the San Francisco Bay Area. And when we got there, he was sleeping. And I texted Karen, and she said, "Wake him up, just because he's been looking forward to seeing you, and he needs to wake up for just a little while." So we stroked him on the arm, and he came to consciousness, and it turned out that he was very alert. He was very funny, and he was very engaged, and he's very aware that he had a stroke. He's very aware that he's paralyzed on his left side. He's going through very rigorous physical therapy and speech therapy. He could speak, but obviously very slowly and not for any length of time. You know, he's speaking in sentences, not paragraphs. But his eyes were sparkling. He knows what he needs to do. He is committed to full recovery. And so I just wanted to bring Rick's energy and also his situation to the entire Humanity Rising community, which is global in scope, and ask everybody to remember Rick and to send prayers. And we all know that where a group of people come together with common intent, particularly in prayer and supplication, that someone be healed, that miraculous things can happen. You know, no man is an island. We all are part of a vast ecosystem. You know, we're part of each other. We're part of nature. We have a symbiotic relationship with the trees. And if everyone who knows Rick Buckley would send love and affection and strength for healing, very specifically to his brain. From what he was saying, you know, his body's okay. It's just that his brain, given the nature of the stroke, it just kind of severed some connections. And it's very interesting today that we're going to be talking about the crisis of connection, because that's what just happened to our dear friend Rick. So I just commend him to you and to your intention and to your prayers. And that's probably a good place for us to just pause and take a moment, as we always do as we begin Humanity Rising, to just breathe a few breaths and close our eyes if we can. Center yourself in your body. And just for a minute, attune yourself to your heart. And as you align with your heart in a spirit of gratitude and thanksgiving, think of dear Rick and send the vibes, send healing, and send love, all together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your prayers for Rick. Thank you for your love for one another. His daughter has created a website that provides updates. I'll put the website in the chat box in a moment for everyone to just tune in and get updates. The more we interact with Rick in the etheric realms, the quicker he'll be able to rejoin us here on Humanity Rising. I now want to introduce my very, very good friend, old friend and colleague, Peter Merry, who's identified an extraordinary man, Cornelius Shaughnessy. And we'll be having a dialogue with Cornelius on the crisis of connection in our time and what we as human beings, both individually and in community, can do to reestablish our essential link that makes all things possible. So Peter, welcome. Cornelius, welcome. I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, your kind of connection to Rick, I hadn't expected. That dropped me straight into the heart space and reminded me of Joanna Macy's teaching around it being about compassion and clarity. Clarity by itself is cold, and compassion by itself you can get lost in the emotional side, and how we hold both of those together. And that's something that I've really witnessed in Cornelius's work, is this kind of radical, I guess, confrontation in a way. It's not like classic meditation where we just move into stillness, but he somehow manages to get us to really question ourselves, how we see ourselves, how we see the world around us, and then from that space to allow the compassion and the fire of radical action to emerge as well. So very excited to have you with us, Cornelius, today. What we're going to do is, rather than talk about the work that Cornelius does, which we will do a bit later on, we thought it was better to give us all an experience of it. And so Cornelius is what's going to happen is Cornelius will introduce himself and the work a little bit. And then we'll go for 30 or 40 minutes with the practice that Cornelius works with. That practice also encourages you to ask questions and things. So feel free to drop questions into the chat, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. And Cornelius loves to be able to respond to questions, so don't hesitate to do that. Remember, everybody, to have selected everyone, which everyone seems to be doing now, which is good. And then after that, Cornelius and I will have a bit of a discussion about his journey to get where he is now, and also the implications of why this work is important for the world. For me, the reason that I was excited to bring Cornelius in is my conclusions, I think, over the last couple of years have been that, we can create all the solutions that we want for the world out there. But ultimately, if those solutions still come from our cognitive, rational space, they come from a place of separation. And we're likely to create a lot more mess in the world than we are to contribute to it. So being able to access a deep place of interconnectedness where actually the solutions don't come from us as separate beings, but come from the world, from nature, from spirit, or however we want to frame it, means that we're far more likely to manifest things that are much more aligned with life than something that we just kind of pops out of or that we create from just our rational thinking, which is why I feel the inner regeneration is so essential for us to be able to do effective work in outer regeneration. And Cornelius is somebody who I've experienced as being a real master in this area of helping us to achieve that. So Cornelius, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So mostly it's better, like Peter was saying, to be expressed through a kind of meditation of sorts. It's not kind of a quiet sitting meditation, although it is for people listening, but you'll hear me talk all the way through it. So we've got certain types of meditation that are very gradual. We can sit and have realizations over 20, 30, 40 years. And there are certain types that really accelerate the process by actually talking you through some very, very deep realizations right from the get-go. So the type of teachings that I've studied and I had the most response to, and I was suffering quite badly with, I had a emotional breakdown. I was kind of non-functional for around 8 years. And I was trying all sorts of things to try and help. I was treatment resistant. So I had a real serious ongoing kind of depression, anxiety that completely kind of crushed my life. And a lot of the kind of gradual approaches just didn't work. And then I started to find these very, very direct, very high teachings that actually start at the highest point and then everyone just kind of catches up. And they're very powerful. So this is the type of meditation that we'll be doing. You'll see how it's different. So we'll talk more about kind of how what the teaching is and why it's so important for this moment. But I guess, you know, the crisis of connection, what we're really looking at is the state of our lives, of politics, of the world, of what we're doing to nature, what we're doing to our planet. It comes from this lack of connection to ourselves, this lack of connection to nature. And that all comes from this sense of separation that we build up. Nature is something other. Everyone else is something other. We have this sense of ego, this sense of separateness. And that means we then look after our own interests. When we have this sense of ego, this sense of contraction, this sense of selfishness, we also become afraid. And this means our brain, the higher functions of it, cease to function so well. And we find that actually, when we look at all the problems in life, we're looking at problems that are revolving around greed and selfishness and ego. So unless we actually uproot these within ourselves, unless we actually look within our own hearts and uproot the ways of thinking and being that are causing this lack of connection, then we can't help the world. So at the moment, everyone's buzzing around, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And you know, there's this, you know, inclination to do, and we want to do, and there is so much to do, but it needs to come from this place, like Peter was saying. You know, the solutions come from really this place of selflessness and compassion and wisdom that these teachings take us to. So get yourself nice and comfortable for the meditation. There's no particular way to sit. And what I want you to do as you begin, just closing your eyes. You may have ideas about meditation, that it might be something you do in order to relax. Or you have to still the mind. Just let go of all these ideas. We're not trying to quieten the mind. Hallelujah. So all of a sudden meditation is doable as we sit. Just gently beginning to be aware of the breath, the air moving in and moving out. Just loosely, not in an obsessive way, not in a rigid way, just very gently, just being aware as the body breathes. I say as the body breathes, because the body does breathe all by itself. Just letting the thoughts and the emotions come and go, not trying to clear the mind, just letting them come and letting them go. As you sit and as you breathe. Just allowing yourself to fall into this profound state of acceptance for what's arising. So that's thoughts, emotions, sounds, sensations. We always have this inner desire to manipulate things, to create pleasure and avoid pain. And we don't realize that actually this is where our suffering comes from. As we sit and meditate, we're just letting all of these barriers fall away, letting things just be as they are. So that doesn't mean we need to get rid of all of these thoughts, these judgmental thoughts that are arising. Just remove the value from them. Let them come and let them go. Just gently watching the breath and moving in and moving out. Just let the thoughts and the emotions go. Let them come and let them go. You'll see that they do this anyway. They arise out of nowhere and disappear. Unless we cling to them, try to avoid them or interact with them, and then they maintain, they'll stay until we let go with the attention, and then they'll disappear. As we sit, begin to see that the mind really has a mind of its own. We say, I think, just like we say, I breathe, but just like the body breathes all by itself, also the mind is thinking all by itself. The emotions are arising all by themselves. They're just conditioned patterns of response. Our mind is producing emotions and thoughts to help us navigate through the world. Really get this sense of ease with the thoughts and the emotions. Just this morass of information. Letting it all come and go as you sit in this state of profound acceptance for what's arising. Every sound, every sensation, every thought, every emotion. Just allowing your mind to make peace with what's arising. Rather than waging this inner war, things having to be a certain way, a certain sound having to stop. Thought that irritates, an emotion that we don't like, rather than trying to avoid, cling, grasp, chase. Just sit, be with things, allowing the mind to fall into a state of desirelessness. Notice that you're watching thought and emotion. Let thought and emotion come and they go. There are gaps as well where there are no thoughts and no emotions. Notice how you observe all of this, that you're there to witness the absence of thought and emotion. And here we come to just the primary ignorance, really, of the mind, which is the over-association with all of these thoughts and emotions. If they can come and go and you can experience their absence, how can you be them? Of course, you're not them, they're just conditioned patterns of response. So we begin to see our thoughts and emotions very differently. Perfectly good things to help us navigate through the world with, but not to define who we are, not to be so wedded to. As we keep looking at the mind, we notice that the mind, while everything is coming and going, these sounds, the sensations, thoughts, the emotions, whatever you are is not coming and going. You're just here. And you're aware of all of this coming and going. Everything in this state of flux and change. But whatever's looking, it's aware of this flux and change. It itself is not changing, is it? It just always is. Aware. If there's anything at all we could say, I am this, it's this ongoing experience of being aware. So gently off of the breath, we just come to sit, noticing the fact that we're aware. You don't have to do anything to do that. You are aware, and you're aware that you're aware, so just sit with it. Let the thoughts and the emotions come and go, just like the sounds and the sensations and everything else. So a very simple noticing of the fact the mind's aware, and bringing our attention back to this all the time. You could also call this coming to the present moment. This will take us very close to this. So much of what we think we are is bound up in these thoughts and emotions. Thoughts about past, thoughts about future, thoughts about now. All just concepts. This sea of concepts that we string together and call me, I. My experience, my life. And yet, to whom is all of this arising? Whatever is here, right now, that's aware. Again, we don't try to get rid of all of these thoughts and emotions, these associations. We just remove the value from them and begin to come back to the very essence of the mind. It's an unusual thing, awareness. You can't grasp hold of it, can you? It's not a thing. It's not an object. We can get a sense of being aware. If I ask you if you're aware, you'll immediately say yes. So you're aware that you're aware. But it's kind of everywhere and nowhere, isn't it? It's formless. So this thing that we call I in the center is actually something that's formless. And all this wading around and fighting and pulling about within our thoughts and emotions, as though there's something to gain and there's something to attain, and there's something to lose. But actually, when we come to just look at the mind and be with the mind, we notice that awareness is always the same. It's not changing. Whatever you are is not shifting and it's not changing. So why all the bother? So seeing this, you can really rest. Everything is in a state of flux and change, but whatever you are, this sense of being in amongst this is not shifting or changing, formless, immutable. While the body is aging, decaying, cells coming and going, you come to awareness. It's always the same. It's timeless. So you're a very different thing than perhaps you realized. But in amongst this web of illusion, it's just really what our thoughts and emotions are. We're cooking it all up in our head, aren't we? We've somehow come to the impression of that we're the opposite, actually, of what we really are, that we're in a state of constant flux, change, that there's things to be gained and things to be lost. But coming to this simple experience of being aware, we realize that none of this is true. It's an ignorance. And don't worry about understanding anything I'm saying. Just come to the light of your own mind, the awareness of your own mind. It reveals its nature. Turn the mind in on itself, looking at itself. Its nature reveals itself to itself. In its own good time. But of course, there's nothing to gain and attain, is there, when we look at our own awareness? And so, what is there to gain and attain from meditating? We don't have to worry or stress. And just sit. Really, we can begin to allow the mind to rest. Really rest. The more and more we see the underlying nature of the mind, or we can simply just let things be as they are. Come to this profound stillness. We begin to see that the whole construction of being a sense of separate self is something the mind is creating. All of these thoughts and emotions arising, imagined by the mind. So whatever the mind is, it's weaving this illusion. The nature of the mind is that it allows for this ignorance to develop, that we begin to see ourselves as something. It's the opposite, actually, of what we are. And come to our own awareness, and we can see, we can begin to sense that awareness is kind of everywhere. It's inside and outside. After a while, we can begin to feel consciousness outside and inside. And in seeing this outside and inside fall apart, we begin to see that the nature of our mind is not just the nature of our mind, this imaginary self who has claimed this beautiful expressive, creative dance. It's not ours. As you're looking at life, the emptiness of your mind is the void. The thoughts, the emotions, all the actions and drama that come from it. The creative capacity of reality itself. Reality has confused itself, entered into a dream of being something other than what it is. Experience separation, duality, light and dark, everything in between, the tension of existence. And in this tension, if we can allow, and in time we all do, through this great wisdom, compassion begins to arise. Very naturally and very spontaneously. When we begin to see that the mind is reality, many people call the mind the wish-fulfilling jewel, because it's an empty void that somehow can create all of this majestic display of ego, and perhaps it's enough of that. Many of us, we get to the point where we see, feel the sense of contraction as a pain, a suffering. Perhaps we begin to wish for something else. Perhaps we let go of desires, let go of the imagined self, come to the clarity of the mind, and we have one final wish, perhaps. But the fruit of this silence is profound wisdom and compassion, and so, this being a direct method, we can bring this along by looking into the awareness of our mind, and throwing in this wish. Seeing as my mind can imagine anything, then I ask, it imagines this. But for those that wish to cross the water, may I become a boat, a raft, a bridge. For all those ailing in the world, until every sickness is healed, may I become the doctor, the nurse, the medicine itself. May I become a mighty tree under which all can take shade, the wish-fulfilling jewel, fulfilling the temporary and permanent wishes of all those around. May no one have an insignificant interaction. May sharp mirror-like wisdom shine through. May boundless compassion shine through and become a light which all can follow home, until all beings are free from suffering. May I arise as a condition that brings all those to peace, to fulfillment, to happiness and enlightenment. So we summon this lotus to arise through the mud of our experience. The suffering is all of a sudden seen as so necessary. The tension of existence, the light and dark, all seen as so necessary. So until every being is free from suffering, may we arise as a condition. that liberates all other conditions. Bringing everything to peace and clarity, and loving wisdom. And so we all in this space, the benefit of this time we spend sitting and looking, let us keep none of it for ourselves. Let us send every benefit, every ounce of clarity or compassion or feeling that's arisen, may it be channeled into Rick's brain, into his mind, into his body. To his life, radiating out through his past, his present, his future, healing, making all things possible, rising his body, his mind, everything. To a state of clarity, wisdom and compassion, where profound healing can arise. Keep nothing for yourself. We hold this wish that Rick becomes a living Buddha for the sake of all beings, and that all of these struggles, the mud that he is experiencing, that he bursts through as the lotus. And we share this prayer for anyone else that's suffering in the world. All of us connected. One. And so as we very, very gently we open our eyes and we bring this into our lives, this selfless openness, this compassion. And each time we wish to remember this, we just come to our awareness. That's all. We just rest there. And through this, wonderful things happen. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. Allow yourself to be in the silence. Don't step out of it. People believe that meditation is something you practice and then you get up and back in business. But let's make everything meditation. Let's bring this into our living, waking lives, that our meditation merge with everything. So someone put, the mind is a big black dog, so excited most of the time, bringing us a new ball every moment. Meditation invites the dog to curl up in front of the fire. Thoughts cause merely a twitch of the ear. The black dog is now curled up beside Rick, giving him a lick of love. Very nice, very beautiful. It is our mind can take the display of all sorts of things. And what we find when we just release ourselves, this is the problem, is we have a sense of self and we're trying to look for happiness, but it doesn't work, does it? I mean, how many decades have we been doing this? It doesn't work. And actually, when we just let go of that, and we just come into pure selflessness, we do sit by the fire of spirit, and this changes, it transforms, and it does so in a very kind of gentle way. And what we see is, as we kind of look out in life, we can begin to see, once we come into this kind of selfless lens, this openness, then we can start to see all of the things, going on in life and going wrong in life. And we see that it's all comes from a lack of wisdom and a lack of compassion. It's so clear once you see this. Someone says, can you share any downloads, antidotes from source in meditation that you've experienced or been surprised from? So things that I've had happen, that I've kind of had happen in meditation. I'll interpret that question as that. Yes, lots of things. I mean, when you come to awareness, when you first come to it, it feels like the most boring thing in the world. You either don't know what someone's talking about. What is awareness? Where is it? I can't grasp hold of it. Or just, so what? It's like my moment-to-moment awareness. But as you start coming to it, you realize it's reality, and it's pure wisdom. It's pure compassion, and it is the wish-fulfilling jewel, and anything can come from it. And from keep abiding in it, actually a lot of your behavior becomes spontaneous, your experiences become spontaneous, your thoughts and emotions become teachings, everything around you, phenomena, becomes a teaching. It's really profound, it's really powerful. And if we look at this awareness of awareness, coming to this awareness of awareness, it's really the culmination of many different traditions. Come to this culmination of being aware of being aware. We find it in Christian prayer, and Buddhists talk about it quite clearly in Advaita Vedanta, the yoga philosophy teachings of the Vedic traditions. We see people coming to this awareness of awareness, and the silence, and so much magic, and so many different downloads and experiences arise from this, but not by trying, and not by trying at all. It's just coming to. It's so simple. Is so simple, but because the mind, it believes that it's the thoughts and the emotions, it's constantly trying to grasp at them, and so everything becomes quite frozen and rigid, and we act from a place of our views and what we think and how we feel. And actually, when we come to awareness, it's something else begins to happen. There's a freedom, and from that freedom, really, incredible things, incredible experiences, but more than experiences, actually action and our ways of being change, but mostly our ways of seeing ourselves change. So yeah, any questions about any of that, please let me know. Often with these teachings, when we're talking about these kind of direct, highest level teachings, we're kind of walking you through, probably in that meditation, we've done about a good 50 years of meditative realization we've talked through. It can be very confusing. And so the whole process of this teaching is really us catching up to this view and exploring the facets of it. And the way that this teaching works is that it goes into your own views, and it becomes the Dharma, the truth of it begins to shine through your own being. And so this is why we ask for questions. Really, most of the teaching is coming to this silence, and living from this silence and being in this silence. But the questions help us to resolve any doubts. It's an important part, and it makes the teaching your own. It brings it into your own framework. But that's just a kind of a short a kind of meditative journey. There's many kind of offshoots of where this all goes from there. But really, this if you can take anything, it's just to come to this inner place of silence. It cleanses everything as well. When we have anger or fear, or when we start to see the changeless mind, and we begin to take refuge in it, then we can begin to come from this very, very centered place. Regardless of what's going on, we can begin to come to this very, very centered place. And from this, our mind, in this state of relaxation, they've done studies, and it shows that the higher functionings of the mind, the brain lights up like a Christmas tree. There's a very clear logic into, we might talk as though, becoming a bridge for all beings to, end the suffering of all as something, like a kind of belief system. But actually, when we look at it, the parts of the mind that govern that kind of wisdom and intelligence light up like a Christmas tree when we find this inner stability in this inner refuge. So someone asked, is it the simplicity of this meditation which is its gift? Yes, that's the irony of it. There's this complicated explanation of how we get into that silence and what it is and what happens, but it is pure simplicity. It's a whole lot of nothing, you know. If you can really sit and take your mind to the point where it's just sitting and just being, and just the light of your own mind is the path. The light of your own mind is the path. So we begin to see that. For me, I explored so many different traditions, so many different belief systems, and I got my head so full of, is this one right? Is that one right? Is this one right? And one teacher I met, and you know, I was talking through yoga philosophy with him because he was an Advaita Vedanta teacher, and he said, I was trying to get some answers about, you know, this or that or the other. He said, I'm not interested in talking to you about yoga philosophy. He said, I'm up to my eyeballs in it, but it's of no use, let me tell you. He said that the truth is that you come to the silence of your own mind, the light of your own mind. When you know what that light is, all the teachings, all the knowledge is there. And it just clicked. Like, of course, following the light of my own mind, how can you argue with that? It's existence. And the more and more you come to it, the more and more you can begin to see, you know, and you can pick up the books and the Vedas and you can see them in a different place. You can see that they were speaking from this place. But then they kind of say, oh, you know, their teachings, and then everyone kind of sets it into a dogma, and you know, then we get lost. But yeah, if we can begin to see that it's the light of our mind that we are following, there is a light there. Yeah, that's it. When we notice the mind, the awareness is light, isn't it? It's conscious. It's aware. Someone's saying. Whitner is saying, for me, it feels more about moving into your heart rather than the stillness in your mind. So from the stillness in the mind, the heart actually comes forward. Something arises called bodhicitta, which is a spontaneous wish for all beings to be free from suffering. That's how it's translated. So when we come into the stillness, that arises. But what we work is with the clarity of wisdom and compassion. So at the end of the meditation, we're coming into the stillness of the mind, which is really the creative aspect of existence itself, and we've let go of all desires. There's nothing else there, and we're coming to the creative stillness, and we're saying, manifest a living Buddha for the sake of all beings. And there is that is love. There is nothing higher than that love. There is nothing more encompassing that love, and it's that propels you. It's that's the secret of the practice, actually, because when you come into the silence, you know, when you come into the silence, after a while, this incredible sense of boundless compassion begins to naturally spring from you. And you see that is the fruit, that is the perfume of the practice. So we conjure that up and we call that. But it's the fruit that arises, you know, from the tree. The perfume comes from the flower, and the flower is the stillness. So Kurt says, what do you see as the way to bring that centered place to a person experiencing extreme fear or anger? So what I do is working with people with anger is to get them to acknowledge and to feel the anger, and to just come into it in a sense of the present moment, and begin to fall into a state of acceptance and a state of allowance around the anger, to kind of meet it in a kind of loving way. Because what we usually do when we feel anger, there's a constriction, and the constriction is born out of a lot of resistance. Maybe it's valid, maybe it's not, whatever. But you come to the actual raw experience of the emotion, then just soften, and just allow to feel it. Don't try and get rid of it. Don't try, let it rip within you, you know, just sit and start to treat it like an open wound, you know, let it have air. Let it put balm on it, you know, love it better. And it's this gentle. I've done work over COVID. There's lots of people that have been angry about all sorts of things, and I've kind of displayed in ways in order to help people that are struggling with anger and things like this. And actually, through this application of the teaching, it liberates it. There's a very profound teaching. It's called the 5 Buddhas teaching. I'll try and get the link. There's a great article about it, how we actually work with our inner emotions. But it really is about coming into an openness with them. But it's important when we do these kind of teachings as well that they're taught in a basin of compassion and wisdom, so that we can help guide the process along. But yeah, if it's extreme fear or extreme anger, you start by coming into someone's perspective, understanding their perspective from their perspective without overlaying yours or solutions. You listen, you feel, you might even get in and really see it with them, and then you begin to, from that place, start to kind of apply teaching and awareness, and start to get them to allow. And then the idea is, what you want to do is to help them lotus it. So from that anger, the other side of that anger is actually profound clarity and wisdom. So when you look at the 5 Buddhas teaching, you actually see that actually anger, every kind of neurotic, crazy display of our mind, is actually the Buddha displaying in ignorance of itself, which is, it's still the Buddha nature, it's still reality. So we start to see it differently, we start to see everything differently, actually. We don't see anything as separate, everything is a oneness. We're all Buddhas leading each other home. And the anger is the mud. Just like the experiences that have made us angry are the mud from which the lotus arises. So acknowledging these and working with these energies, in a way we can bring about the mud, the lotus from the mud. But it's important as well, if someone is in extreme anger and fear, that you do kind of help them through it. Often as well, getting them to get into therapy and talking about it, and finding ways of dealing with some of the things that are going on in their lives is really important. Can it be done for another? Kurt says, all things are possible from that stillness. So you can hold space for someone in that. You can hold space from someone who's caught in all sorts of anger and everything. And if you hold wisdom and calmness for someone, if you talk them through whatever they're going through, and then come at it like this is what the solution is, you come to it, then you can really help by exuding a certain way. And once people start to see as well from talking to you, if you're coming from a place of stillness, they start to see and feel from you that this is a better way, and so naturally they'll move more towards it. You can also pray, and prayer is very powerful, especially when you heighten your prayer, when you come enter into a state of selflessness, and you have a state of openness and clarity and stillness, and you have that bodhisattva prayer, we call it, or that prayer for the to become the bridge for all beings. Your everything becomes very powerful, because you're not wishing for things for yourself, that there's greater wisdom, that before you enter into clarity and compassion, life cuts you off at the knees because you're like a danger to yourself and others. But when you come into this more this higher state, then really quite magical things. I've had lots of bizarre things that happen from this state. To an unconscious person, yes, you can sit with them, and if you're around them, you can just sit with the boundless compassion and just be directing it to them. The awareness in your mind is the same as theirs, so there is no difference. Whether they're friend or enemy or whatever they're going through, that they are the same. You are the same together always. And by sitting and realizing that, and by holding someone's hand or just holding them in your mind, you can really have incredible effects. And I've had experience with my own masters coming into my mind, and all sorts of things happening just from connecting with them, living and dead as well. So it's very, very powerful. Someone said here, Diana's talking about TM. She had a blue light, a vortex, third eye pulled me in. Something happens to the frontal lobe. Yeah, you can have all the very profound experiences that begin to happen when you come into this stillness. And often people will see lights and things like that. You don't have to. It's not something you should yearn for, but that's really important about all of our experiences. We just let them come and let them go. Don't try and hold on to them. Even realizations, you can have a profound moment. You think, oh God, I need to hang on to this. Don't. Just let it come, let it go, let it flow. So there's no chasing, it's just like,
Cornelius, just like I remember when I was first discovering meditation, end of the 90s, I was coming from having been like an activist. Environmental activist, and all that kind of thing, really immersed in that, and saw other people around me meditating, but I was kind of, what a waste of time. I mean, there's shit to do in the world, and you're sitting on a cushion, Can you speak a little bit to that, this kind of what some would perceive as a tension between acting in the world and going inside of ourselves? that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, all action is coming from a place, and it can be coming from clarity or not. And when it's not coming from clarity, you're just like a dog chasing its tail, you're a nuisance to yourself and everyone else. But actually, when you come into this state of stillness and this state of compassion, then your actions arise from that. So your action becomes more powerful. It becomes more magical, when you come into that space, and it liberates you from the contractions of your own thought. Otherwise you're just immersed in I think this is what I feel and this is what I think I'm going to do, and you fall over, you tie your own shoelaces and you fall over. So we primarily have to get into a space of clarity and compassion, and most of, whether it's kind of environmental, the concerns that I share, I also share, and these things are important to me. But actually, when we look at the causes of those things, we're saying that the selfishness and greed that perhaps has caused these things, the lack of consciousness, the lack of compassion that these things come from. Well, you need to get that first. You need to become the sun, before you start telling everyone else they need to sort their lives out and stop doing all of this and that and the other. And so if you're coming from not from a clear place, not from a place of compassion, then you're not becoming the solution. And so my advice is to get centered in yourself, and it means that your action is helpful. You can bang about on the table, as I do, about all sorts of things, but actually where do we then go from that? You can bang around and scream about problems all you want, but what is the solution? And you need to lotus it. You need to come to this place of profound wisdom and compassion and become a bridge for all involved, and enter into dynamic action and loving action. Otherwise it just turns into an us and them and screaming and shouting and blah blah blah. So wring your hands and bang them on the table, but come from this place of peace and compassion and lead other people to it. Everything just becomes more effective. Everything becomes more effective. And people say, oh well, you must be like turn into a robot and be so detached from reality. And it was something people would often say to me. And so I often will, express my views, in specific ways, and show that I don't disagree with that, I don't agree with that, and all of this kind of stuff, in order to show people that actually you do still have, kind of a response to things. You are still involved. You can see the challenges. You can see the problems in the world. You can see everything that's going on, and this is your response. So it's not like an idiot compassion where you're just kind of sitting there going, oh yeah, everyone wants to be healed, or you're not. You're really seeing it. You're seeing the disaster of it all, and you're saying, enough, and enough, and this, come to this, center yourself. And then you guide others to the center, live from your own heart, and then you guide others to it. While all this kind of lockdown stuff was going on, I went and had a look at some of the protests and stuff like that. And often it's lots of people with all sorts of extreme views and screaming and shouting and it's problem. And, go around asking people what the solution is. It's the solution isn't there, And so you realize there's a rarity to coming to this place of stillness, and there's a preciousness to it, and there's a wisdom to it, and actually it needs more of this. It needs more of people becoming this and being displaying themselves in a higher way. Lotus yourself, bring yourself to a high point, and then live from this.
My experience of it has been like it's more an impulse that comes through you, as opposed to something you've thought up. And in that sense, there's also, when that happens, you don't actually know what the result of the action is going to be as well. So there's a kind of surrender in the action as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And often you have to get quite courageous with that, because when you do kind of fall into stillness, you especially when you're overlaying these kind of bodhisattva prayers where you say, may I become a wish fulfilling jewel, fulfilling the temporary and permanent wishes of all involved. May I arise as anything that brings peace and compassion. Like, wow, stand back type thing, because it does. I mean, you display yourself in ways, and then you're like, where did that come from? But things that become so spontaneous. Your action becomes spontaneous, and then all of a sudden, in retrospect, you're like, wow, that was good. But it wasn't from ego. I'd love to say I think up about people are like, oh, you taught me this way and that way, and kind of got into my mind and into my skin, and you blew everything up inside me. And I came to this point, and I'd love to say it was all kind of architectured as a kind of intellectual point, an intellectual journey, but actually it was from me becoming into my own silence and coming into this spontaneous form of action. So it's something to be aware of as well, when you are coming into this silence, that there is a hidden wisdom that starts to come out and display itself. But when you start to trust it, you start to see that actually it brings about peace for everyone involved. Friends and enemies and everyone alike. It brings everything into the heart, and it heals and it liberates. So you can start off, with talking about the anger, bringing that balm of kindness to your own kind of feelings and emotions, and changing the way you are with your inner world. And then what happens is you start to do that in the outer world as well, or what you perceive inner and outer initially.
There was a question earlier that's got lost a little bit in the stream, but I think what would also be relevant also as a way for you to just tell a little bit about your journey, where Lynn says, Cornelius, you mentioned a time of depression and disconnection in your life. This is the experience other guides in our world. How is falling apart a gateway to acceptance of the state you and others have come to?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's the break, may you break your heart, may you shatter your mind, may you lose your mind. I started getting depression when I was about 15, and I tried every kind of treatment going. It just wasn't working. I tried every type of meditation going, and it just wasn't cutting the mustard. I kind of went through 8 years probably where I was suicidal every day, waking up crying, going to sleep crying. I just could eat and sleep, and I wasn't doing that very well. I was just a complete mess. I had all sorts of things happen in my life, a string of one thing after another. It was just absolute pain from sunrise to sunset, and then I would nightmare through the evening. So it was profound pain. And one day I just I also, you can see me, I move my neck a lot. I had developed Lyme disease, which was undiagnosed for the whole time, which exacerbated everything, probably made it treatment resistant. And started getting nerve pain. They were testing me for MS, and there were all sorts of things. And I remember the doctor just saying to me, we've looked at everything and we don't know. You might as well be in the Middle Ages for how we can help you medically. Which when you have a doctor telling you you're kind of hopeless, it's really sets into your mind that. So my friend rang me and said, would you come to India, just be here, and you can rest. There's a lovely beach and sea, and it's beautiful, and so come and be here, and you can stay as long as you like. So I got there, I flew there, I dragged myself there. I was not feeling good at all, and I went to her house, and her partner were having a row and splitting up. It was all over, and I was in the middle of this. I couldn't. She said, you can't stay, and I knew I couldn't stay. So the choice was either go home or go on, and I ended up going to this place called Hampi. And I remember sitting out in front of this is what triggered it. I sat out in front of the rice field in this restaurant in Hampi, and I remember sitting there looking out, and it was sweltering hot. My body was in so much pain, and my mind was, I thought, I'm in the middle of nowhere in India, and I'm having a really difficult time. But once I got the physical stuff really bad, it made everything 1,000 times worse. And I just, in that moment, I really let go. I surrendered, and I thought, and I looked at reality. I like to call it God, but I see it as reality rather than a man in the sky, obviously. And I said, I feel cursed. I feel like I'm in hell constantly, and I've been wishing out of it, and I'm obviously supposed to live like this, and I can't. But I will. And whether I'm supposed to live like this forever or die now, I love you, and it doesn't matter how I feel or what's happening to me, and I just love you, and that's that. And it was that all of a sudden my love for reality became unconditional, whereas before it had been transactional, like please help me, you're not, you are, I feel happy, I'm not happy. All of a sudden my love became unconditional, and I just felt everything kind of melt And I was still in, my mind didn't settle, and my body didn't feel any better, but there was something that just kind of melted. And within 4 or 5 minutes, a string of the most bizarre events kind of happened. Someone came into the restaurant who looked just like my ex-partner, moved like my ex-partner, had the same name as my ex-partner, who had caused a lot of trauma for me, but was really nice, came over and started talking to me. And the reason why they came over and started talking to me is because they were with someone who I had happened to meet in Thailand 15 years ago. So all of a sudden there was this coming together. They walked through the door, and he came over, and he was just this really nice, lovely person. And he was just kind. And through that, they started to see there was this kind of fusing of him and my ex-partner. And they felt this healing arising, this kind of catharsis, this kind of weird exchange that was kind of bringing peace. And then they said, come to Tiruvannamalai. And this is a Ramana Maharshi's ashram, who's a profound saint from India. And I ended up there, and they got together, and I was gooseberry, so I left them, and I was just walking around the mountain talking to sadhus and teachers. And one of them I shared all my dramas with, and said, I just want inner peace. And he told me to stand up, and said to the whole room, everyone look, this is Cornelius. Everyone had been asking for things. Oh, you ought to be happy. I want to be more settled in life. I want, a better career. And, I'm finding it difficult with all these kind of small problems. And I came up with this huge problem and just saying, I just want peace. And I felt quite noble in that. I want enlightenment. That's all I want. And he said, he said to me, there are men in the village that just want 5 minutes of bliss from a woman. And he said, but not you, Cornelius, you want an eternity of peace. You want an eternity of bliss. He said, and he took a room full of people, and bearing in mind, I was very kind of shy at the time and in a lot of pain. And he said, look at Cornelius. This is the greediest little bastard you will ever meet in your life. He said, look, the state of this, there's pure ego in this man, constantly wanting peace. God's had enough of him. I've had enough of him. And he just kind of did that, and there was just this long moment of silence, and something happened. It just kicked the leg of the stool away, and I walked out, and there was nothing there. There was just birds and cars and people fighting in the market over something, and it was all just there, and it was all just fine, and everything was kind of empty but there and happening, and I felt one with everything. There was this dance, and I was it, and it was me. And my brain started to burn, like really burn. And I was quite worried about it. And then all of a sudden that worry just melted. And every kind of emotion that was coming up or thought was coming up, the moment it came up, it just self-released. And I ended up going to Rishikesh on the train. I can't quite remember much of it. I just cried all the way. And then I went to sat at the banks of the Ganges in the Rishikesh. And this mother dog had just had all these little babies, and they were all just running around, and all running around me, and I just sat there for days just crying, and everything was just releasing over a period of about a month. But so that was kind of how the initial but since then it's been one kind of you think, this is it, and then boom, there's something else, and then boom, there's something else. It's this ever growing, ever expanding sense of realization and beingness, and the depth of it is so deep. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think that's a very important thing. But everyone looks like, oh, have you got it, or have you not got it, and when have you got it? And actually to see it as an ever evolving process, it keeps our humility, and it keeps us not kind of looking at something as a destination, but rather this unfolding journey.
Beautiful. Thank you. This suffering, I think it was in the question originally as well, from your experience of working with others, some degree of suffering needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a way around it? Well, I think a lot of people, man, do we all have to go through that?
You don't have to go. The beauty of it is you don't have to go through that, because you can have people helping you, talk you through the realizations. And that's why teaching in this kind of way, regardless of how much suffering you've got, if you can, you can get people to see within their own mind that the way that they're doing things and how they're living, that they want to break free from. If you don't have that at all, then why would you bother even listening to me? I mean, I will gather that most of the people listening to this have had some degree of I yearn for something else, or the suffering has gotten too much, or just that there feels like life could be more. There needs to be some kind of, to get a dissatisfaction, at least chronic dissatisfaction, to get you to the place where you want to open up and let go. But the more pain you've had, the more legs of the table that are off already. And so people that have had a lot of pain can have these sudden awakenings where, because there wasn't much left, it had been eroded by pain. But unfortunately, you can also erode this through wisdom, through the application of wisdom, through the meditative path. All of these kind of things that will help. So you don't have to, have suffering, but if you haven't, don't worry, wait a little bit. I'm sure you will. As I say to people, just wait a little, come back next week.
And, Cornelius, it feels like, because it's so simple, right, at this one level, and developmentally, I see it in our developmental pathways, that we had that sense of rest before the kind of rational cognitive mind and sense of separate self emerged. And yet somehow in our industrialized civilization, something's happened where that separate sense of self emerged, and we weren't able to hold that in the context of the rest, in the context of the being, in the context of the interconnectedness. Have you any sense of how it is we ended up here?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the prodigal son, isn't it? We took our being, our inheritance, and went out in the world and spent it. We took ourselves from nature, and we organized, and we naturally contracted away from it. The more we moved out the forest, the more we were in buildings, the more we began to look at the community started to shatter, and we started to come just to family, and then that family got smaller and smaller and smaller. Then the more we enter into separation we have now, we're just kind of just us, isn't it, sometimes? So you can see this separate, and it comes from the way we're living and the detachment from nature. And you realize that the reason why we have climate change, the reason why we have people cutting down the forests and poisoning the oceans and not thinking twice about it, is this sense of contraction, because they feel separate from everything. So I don't feel separate from everything, so I don't want to hurt it. It's just as simple as that. I love it, because my mind is open, and it's not stuck in the contraction of self. So over thousands of years, we've kind of come into this kind of contracted state, and it's reached a culmination where we're literally destroying the planet that we're on. It's very serious now, and actually it needs to have gone through that process of, like the prodigal son spending its inheritance until there's nothing left, until we hit the consequences of our actions, which we have now. And now we have to return. We have to return to nature. Now we have to listen. Now we have to clean the sea. Now we have to clean the air. Now we have to stop we have to, because otherwise we're not going to be here. And so this is really, really important. And so coming to this someone put, we have to clean our sandbox up. Yeah, we do. We've made a mess, and it's realizing why we've made a mess and bringing people back to nature. And this is why people talk about climate change, and there's great perspectives on it, but I actually think what we need to do is get people connected to their nature and get them connected to nature, get them in nature. Some kids don't even know what an aubergine is, or what a pepper is, or where an egg comes from. And it's this is the detachment. You may think, oh well, that's not quite important, we need to get everything to focus on net zero and all of this, and all of that's important, but actually when we come back to really what is it, and it's that relationship with our own nature, and that relationship with nature that we need to invoke. And it's not just nature, it's politics, everything, the far right, far left, everything's so polarized, everything's so black and white. Everyone's in this world where there's kind of like Marvel characters, goodies and baddies. There's no gray, there's no intelligence anymore, there's no seeing of things, we've lost wisdom, we've lost it.
That's definitely the conclusion, I think, after all these years of trying to work to change the world. I've come to, it's got to come back to there, because it's got to come from there. That what you just said about us having spent our, what did you say, like
our inheritance?
Spent our inheritance, and there's this kind of, and then there's nothing. you know, and it really does feel like we've hit that, you know, moment that of course is creating all sorts of fear, but all sorts of opportunity as well. But I mean, in that context, which, you know, you're clearly very aware of, there was this quote, and I can't remember it exactly, but it was from Tolkien, and Gandalf says, you know, something like, it's about how you choose to spend the time you have.
Yeah, we can't choose the time that we're born, but we can choose what we do with the time when we're here.
We have, yeah. So how in the, you know, as you look to the future, how are you choosing to spend the time you have?
Well, what I'm moving. I mean, we've all had a very, very difficult 2 years with COVID, and I've done my kind of banging on the table and identifying some of the problems where we're all kind of spinning out through fear and contracting and seeing everything as the enemy and all that. I banged my hands on the table, and now it's about, for me, helping people lotus through that very difficult time, and helping people use the mud of this experience, because we've all gone through this kind of quite traumatic experience in one way or another, to one degree or another, and it's helping people begin to work with that and to come through that and start to I say lotus, you know, to start to develop wise and compassionate responses. And what this time has done is it's kind of torn everything apart at the seams, and it allows for an opportunity for that. And so what I'm really, my work, I'm changing I used to do retreats. I had a Body Maya, a retreat company. I'm still going to be doing retreats, but I'm going to be changing this into a charity and really focusing on a kind of helping people come to their own center and helping people live from their own center, to live from a more kinder and wiser way. And I'm going to be doing all sorts of things that are helping bring people to really positive, cooperative, wise and compassionate ways of reacting and responding. Because there is a way we can look, wherever we are, there is a way we can look at this and actually all come together and really find solutions. But we need to come together. And at the moment, everything is so polarized. We have, you know, left and right, and everyone's mudslinging and everything like that. And what we all need to do is come to our center, hold the center, and then invite everyone into that. And this, for me, it's important, especially with all the changes and the upheavals and war and everything like that, that we all center into this so that the solutions can come. So I want to kind of create and hopefully getting investment for like a modern kind of monastic kind of center where we can help people center and where we can engage in conversations left, right with everyone, bringing everyone to ways of being in their environment that bring this solution that we so need in terms of, you know, what we need, how we need to, start changing our relationship with nature, how we begin to express ourselves in the world. It's really, really important. There's just not enough. There's not enough of this. I mean, people are getting more polarized and more wedded into their extreme positions. And actually, what we need is for us all who are spiritual and who come from this place to start showing people how they can transmute their anger, how they can come to this wiser way, how they can begin to dissolve the duality of the situation and come into to becoming a solution.
Well, you know, we already have a relationship with Broughton, and that's a beautiful place potentially for something like that, I can imagine as well.
Yeah. I'm doing a deep dive retreat there, actually, end of June, beginning of July, which is going really into silence, having 3 days of silence, 6 nights in total. And I love, like you say, at Broughton, they're really doing that, being that kind of beacon of change and bringing people together and helping people find, you know, kind, compassionate ways of being. So yeah, we certainly be working with Broughton and other people that are developing and starting to bring people towards this kinder and more compassionate way.
How can people find out more about the event at Broughton? Have you got a website that?
Yeah, if you go to if you go to bodymaya.com, bodhimaya.com, and if you just send a contact message, I'm just about to kind of do a newsletter about this retreat. But yeah, if you send me a contact, then I can send you all the details, or if you add yourself to the newsletter.
Great, brilliant. Well, let's bring Jim back in here, because we've not, obviously we've connected around Broughton, we haven't connected around ubiquity yet. And you know, part of the core, we kind of focused on regeneration at ubiquity, but we're very clear that it needs to be inner regeneration to enable the outer regeneration. And, Jim, feel free to, chip in. But for me, what you shared is so much at the heart of what we're trying to achieve that we'd love to explore, I think, how we can collaborate further, in ubiquity to embed this work as part of our inner regeneration programs.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Cornelius. Thank you, Peter. This has been a marvelous discourse on inner regeneration, as we call it. And I think the last couple comments you made are really salient, with COVID, Ukraine, climate. The world is now in a escalatingly turbulent, hyper-complex intensity. And unless we keep the inner coherence, our heart coherence, we get caught up in the centrifugal force of a world that's quite literally spinning out of control. So when you talk about, spinning out all your inheritance, that's our moment right now. And how we come back to a inner equilibrium and an equilibrium with the larger ecology is the critical question of the hour. And you very skillfully, I think, Cornelius, are pointing the way. So I just want to thank you, and whatever we can do, certainly with Broughton, with Peter, we're in discussion at that level, but whatever we can do with you, we would love to be collaborating as we move into the future, because people like you are the pathfinders, I think, for humanity as we face some very, very critical challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to, I've worked with Peter, so I know where he's coming from, and to hear you all speaking from the space that we kind of need to be speaking from and guiding people to it is so important. And there's, like I said, there's not enough people doing it. So yeah, I'm more than welcome. I would love to work with you on whatever you're focusing your energy and your attention onto. And I think this message needs to get out. We need to get people to see that the way of reconnecting people to nature is by getting them to reconnect to their own nature. And there are lots of different ways in which we can do that, and you can shift and change the message depending on who you're talking to. But it's important we get everyone there, and through a heart-centered approach, we can pull left and right in and transcend the political aspect of this, and really bring people into this kind of powerful force of change, that does so through this sense of evolution and this sense of cooperation and this sense of openness and this sense of non-violent compassion, and we of course we need this. So yeah, I'm happy to work with you all on this, any of you.
And before I forget, Cornelius, you may have seen in the chat there is an after chat if you do have time.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah, so the link is in there. That we lose the chat, as soon as we close it down. So you might need to copy the link to be able to access it later. Good. And thank you again,
everyone. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Cornelius. As it turns out, those of you who follow the planetary orbits, we're moving into a conjunction that'll happen right as Humanity Rising starts tomorrow between Jupiter and Neptune. And they're going to be in an exact conjunction. And what Cornelius has been talking about just moving beyond the constraints of the ego into the ocean of the self and into the larger complexity of living intelligent consciousness, that feeling, that impulse is more accentuated now with Jupiter and Neptune coming into alignment in the next 24 hours than you find normally in the solar system. It hasn't happened in this way for 166 years. So we'll be talking a little bit more about it, but I was very conscious, Cornelius, as you were speaking, you were channeling that Jupiterian, Neptunian energy, particularly in your opening meditation. It was so spacious and it was so boundless. So I was just very pleased to feel Neptune and Jupiter flowing through you. And I just want to acknowledge that as we close. And tomorrow, as we start Humanity Rising, we'll be commenting as we begin the program on this conjunction in our skies. So thank you, everyone. You're all welcome to the after session chat group. You'll see the link that Stan has put in the chat box. It's been a marvelous session. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same station here on Humanity Rising. Bye for now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cornelius. Thank you, Peter.